during that Afghanistan deployment, obviously on the heels of a helicopter being shot down and some pretty heavy casualties from IEDs, was the op tempo and pace operationally for you guys such that you were busy operationally and you got into some decent?
We were pretty busy throughout the entire time, but we showed up. I think it was September time frame, and we were there over the winter into the spring, right? And so at that point in time, like the spring offensive was like the busiest fighting season, at least down in our region. So if I remember correctly, the winter was a little bit quiet in terms of the things that we did, but we still were active, always looking for work, right? That's what, you train your dogs, you train a team guy, you're out, look for work, right? Look for work. And so that's something that we were doing. So it was busier, I think, right when we got there, but obviously I was a new guy. And we were new stepping into theater, so it took us a little bit to get our bearings. But yeah, it was pretty active. Probably one of the more active at the time, aside from the guys who were in Helmand, probably. Right. But Helmand was just like that was our sister platoon. That was just but unfortunately probably more IED heavy, and we had our share of that too. I can't remember the area we went to, but like our EOD guys were like. We were basically told that we're going to go do this operation in this area. And they're like, this is literally the most IED infested area in the world. And like our EOD guys are like this is like off the charts, like bad to patrol through this. And yeah, we one of our partners lost his legs on that op. Our medic did a great job, getting him stabilized and on the helo and out of there. But it was we sort of knew what we were getting ourselves into. And like, I don't know, like in your deployments, like I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too. Like being a frogman and being in the SEAL teams or just probably in the infantry broadly, I think everyone is probably pretty comfortable with their training and getting in a gunfight and knowing how to shoot, move, communicate, and take the fight to the enemy. It's never easy, but I think that's what we're trained to do. The IED threat neutered our ability to maneuver. You literally couldn't maneuver for the rightful risk of losing life and limb if you step off your Ranger file.
Right.
That fucking sucks.
Yeah, it just, I think speaks to the adaptability of the enemy, in that they're clearly woefully outclassed from a conventional standpoint, from an air asset standpoint, from a technology, satellite, drones, et cetera.
Yep.
So, they figured out a way to still throw a wrench in our fucking gears to an enormous degree for a long time and still do. I do think, and we'll get into this here in a little bit, the newer technology of drones, mini drones, the less expensive drones, et cetera, in mass are further kind of evolving and changing the game as it relates to warfare. But yeah, that was the big ticket item for a long time. And there was a study done in the late 2000s called JIATO. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The Joint IED
Defeat Organization.
Yeah. And they spent several $1 billion over a several year period trying to come up with the most effective means of defeating IEDs, or at least mitigating them. And it ended up being the dog was by far the best capability for that, which makes me curious. Did you guys have dogs with you at all?
We did. We had a guy, and then he ended up going home. I think he had a family emergency, then brought in a new dog guy.
Do you remember if they were East or West Coast guys?
West Coast guys.
Yeah. Do you remember the dogs' names?
I don't, man.
Because
this is one of those things where it's just like, I haven't thought about it forever.
Because this was 2012, 2013.
Nico?
Yeah. No way.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I had to search my memory for a second here.
First name's Taylor.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. What year was that? Do you remember?
12.
Yeah. Dude, that's so wild that you said that. So Nico was what I would call the full circle dog in my career, in that he was a dog that myself and the other trainer, we sourced from Europe, put through his first handler course with the multi-purpose canine program. He did a number of deployments after that, and then was retired, and he came to the Warrior Dog Foundation for several years And then his last handler, Taylor Kavanaugh, who's been on this show several years ago, ended up adopting him and had him. So kind of the full service
That's
circle
funny.
operation. But he ended up.
Surprised I even remembered that. Dude.
That's
That's
awesome.
good. I'm proud of myself.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, not blowing smoke or saying it for the sake of the episode. Absolutely one of the best dogs that I've ever had the pleasure of training. You know, it's impossible for me to say a best dog.
Yeah. It's impossible for me to know because what do I know? Like, I don't see I have no basis of comparison. But I remember everyone was really loved him.
Yeah, I mean he was a top shelf, top tier dog for sure. I mean I could say there's 5 or 6 dogs that I would all put into a category as the best dogs that I've worked with, and he's absolutely one of them. But man,
Guess we were lucky. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for enabling us.
Well, I mean to me it was such an honor to be in that position, but. So I guess operationally for you, are there any operations that stand out as being super memorable for either going exceptionally well or ones that were?
I mean, I think you'll never forget your first time getting shot at.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Can you share that story?
Yeah. I mean, obviously in training we go through it. We have sim rounds. We have whatever blanks and all this stuff, and so. But it's just and obviously we've been in the butts and all that stuff. Yeah. But it just sounds different than I expected. Having rounds incoming, it sounded to me more like the popping of those like packaging material.
Oh yeah,
that's what it sounded like to me, with a little bit of a snap, but like the pop, like from further out. And
to me, it was like a crack of a whip.
Yeah,
it was like, but similarly surprising.
It's just like what's that fucking sound? And it's just like first time getting contacted is when I remember, right? And I still have. Well, maybe I shouldn't say what I've got. If somebody were to have something, one of those rounds that got really close to me that was pried out of a mud wall by one of our guys, it's like, hey, Larsen, you should keep this. And so I've got it.
That's cool.
And so it's, it's just sort of like, I guess a little bit of a reminder of that experience and whatever. And, we successfully maneuvered on the enemy, and we had a predator overhead. And so we called in some, an airstrike, and we were able to handle that pretty seamlessly. And I think that's how most of those went on. I didn't get to go on every op, just because we had force requirements at the time and ratios of Americans to partner force that we could have, which is something I think a lot of us really struggled with, myself included, for just, we trained so well together to sort of like break that up with people that are not really, the high caliber of training, and a lot of them, it ends up being a lot to manage out there, and so we felt probably like less secure not going just us. We'd much rather just go with us, but that's not what sort of the SOTF at the time, was mandating. And so we had to go with a certain ratio. Yeah, I forget what it was, but it ended up being an average, I think, of like half the platoon per op, and so I probably got half the ops that the team did broadly. Got a few GFC ops, which were neat to actually be the guy, in control of like everything and the stack and all that stuff.
Meaning ground force commander.
Correct.
Just for the listener, because
correct.
That's one ding I get sometimes is people are like, I don't even know what the fuck you guys
are talking about. You guys just nerding out over there. Yeah. So got a few of those, which was neat and a good opportunity. And unfortunately, we didn't come home with everybody. Our TACI W, Chris Pike, on an op that I wasn't on, but I remember, being in the talk when we got that we, had a bullet wound to the head, unfortunately.
Do you know really what mission-wise, did something go wrong, or was it just nature of the beast kind of?
I think it's the nature of the beast, man. I'm sure they did, they always look into these things. There's always a pretty thorough investigation. I don't remember what came after it, and I'm glad we look into it. But at the end of the day, that position got ambushed, right? And I don't think we knew where the fire was coming from. Again, I wasn't there, so I can't speak firsthand to it. I was back in the jock, being radio watch, QRF and all that stuff.
In the rear with the gear, huh?
In the rear with the gear, man. They put me second place again. Yeah. But yeah, that was shitty, and that was, I think, emotional for all of us, right? Yeah. You never want to come home without somebody, and he was awesome. Like, he was just like the epitome of, he wasn't a team guy, but he might as well have been. Like, he was just like the epitome. He looked like Vin Diesel, fucking jacked, best attitude ever, out there helping us DF, the chatter and where it was coming from, to help keep us safe and effective. And so, that was tough. Yeah. And I think even though it was tough on us, it goes back to like being, newly engaged too. And like, we're fortunate that we were connected enough where I could have frequent enough calls with back home, but that was something that was also pretty hard where, you don't ever want to, after next of kin are notified and all that stuff, there's like, a comms blackout, right? You're not allowed to talk to anybody about this, right? So when I was able to, like, it was just like, do I even say anything?
Yeah.
Do I say anything to like my mom, or do I say anything to my wife to be? Do I not? I ended up saying something, but like that had to have made it like just. I think the spouses, the wives, the moms, they got to have it harder than the guys in the field. Like, there's no question in my mind, they've got the harder job than the dudes out in the shit. No question to me.
Yeah, I think from an uncertainty standpoint, and that feeling of helplessness is so much more significant, for the families, because to your point, it's like, we're doing what we want to do. You're with your fucking boys, you're, across the fucking globe doing team guy shit, having fun. Yes, it's dangerous, but that's what you signed up for. There's a camaraderie component, like you're blowing off steam. It's fun.
Yeah.
They get stuck with the things that aren't fun, and have to hold the fort down, and just that uncertainty of like never knowing when the phone rings if it's going to be a bad news call or not, and it is tough. I don't think they get enough credit for sure.
They don't. But yeah, I mean, it was an interesting time, man. So that was like what we firsthand experienced. But then, like in a separate area of Afghanistan, one of my buds and SQT classmates, Matt Cantor, got shot. Ramp ceremony. We carried him on. We had a few ramp ceremonies, like obviously with Pike, Cantor, had another one. Like, and that was just like, yeah, it's tough, man. Like carrying your brothers and like loading them up on a C-17 to go home, and that was rough. And then we also had, Commander Price. Yeah. Different circumstance, but that occurred, I think, on we were on an op. Like, we were like actually going out the door. Like, we're about to load the helos, and like, we got the call and said, hey, like, he's dead, effectively. And so we didn't really have time to like know what happened. We loaded up and went out and didn't really know what was happening. But two of my other junior officers that I know really well were there, managing that situation. Yeah. And so on that deployment. So it's crazy in hindsight, especially now that I work in a job where there's no ramp ceremonies, those are just the ones in country, and then the ones back CONUS too. It's a different life, and it's hard to communicate.
Yeah. So you were in Afghanistan when Price lost his life. Have you seen any of the? Maybe you saw me ask Vice Admiral Harward about this,
but I watched him.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen any of the kind of conspiracy that?
I hadn't. I heard you bring that up, and that was the first I heard of it.
I don't know.
I think
because I've had several people ask me about it, or like I've seen comments over the years. Just the occasional, almost like pot shot. I mean, not. I'm trying to think if it's anybody that I actually know well that's asked me about it. Not that I can recall, but I've seen enough comments from different episodes or whatever. People like, why aren't you asking about this and the controversy surrounding like that he was murdered and that he uncovered something? And
yeah,
I'm just like, I haven't fucking heard of that.
I know firsthand the guys that were with him.
Yeah.
There at the SOTF. I can say 99% certainty that there's no merits to any of that.
Yeah.
I think that it just became too much for whatever the reason is.
Yeah.
I think there was indications of that becoming too much. There's some people in our community who have unfortunately taken their own life, and there's zero indication, right, of any premeditated, of that being, that kind of ideation occurring. And those are the biggest surprises to everybody. Like, oh, dude, that's like the best dude ever. Like, I have no idea how in the hell could this possibly happen. I think there was there was evidence to support that, there was some challenges there.
Did you see any of that personally, or you just?
No, I wasn't there.
I got you.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
They were in a different, pocket.
Yeah. I'm curious from a leadership standpoint because, I've had far fewer officers on the show than I have enlisted, and I'm always, kind of baffled by the lack of communication from your leadership prior to deployment of giving you kind of the 30,000-foot view of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to ascertain, especially now looking back on a 20-year conflict in Afghanistan, that we didn't really define what winning it looks like, didn't have the clear-cut objectives to what winning looks like as well as we should have, or if at all. Did you get any sense from any of your higher-ups that when you were going there, this is the macro, here's the micro, here's where you fit in, this is what we're trying to do?
I think not enough macro, clearly. I don't think easy for me to say because I'm not privy to those conversations, but I think that if I still don't understand what we were trying to accomplish, having served and having reflected on it, that there is a failure of leadership.
Yeah.
That's probably the single, job, really communicate the commander's intent. What is the mission? At every layer down, strategically, operationally, tactically. I think we had a pretty good view tactically what to do. It's sort of like, NA, whatever. You signed up to be a warfighter, you're going to go do that. Operationally, I think a decent view, hey, in this general, province or, adjacent provinces, here's the challenges, here's what we're trying to do about that. But in terms of the most macro view, probably stemming from the president all the way down, what's our end state objective here? And how are we going to accomplish it? It just seemed like a moving target and always nebulous. And unfortunately, in my experience in the culture of it, was not even an acknowledgement of that, because it almost seems like even if you asked up the chain of command politely in a curious manner, there's sort of this mentality or culture of oh, you just don't fucking get it, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And that is totally stupid, totally stupid. From a company standpoint, imagine if you have some employees or something like that.
Yeah, it's
and it's oh, you just don't get it. It's the responsibility of the leader
for you to get it.
To do that. And so and this is one of the things I really love the way Jocko thinks about this stuff, extreme ownership. It is the job of the leader. If it's not clearly communicated, it's the leader's fault to adapt how they're communicating the strategic objectives so that the junior people understand. It's not the junior people's fault that they don't understand. It's the leader's fault for not communicating it clearly in a way that's digestible and something they can get behind and really understand. I don't think we had that in either theater, at least during my service, and just through talking to other people. It becomes extremely frustrating that we didn't have that. And so I lived this weird mental battle with myself where I mentioned, the Trident is the most important thing that to me that I've had the opportunity to accomplish for a lot of reasons. I think, being a warrior and being a part of a warrior culture and community is something that I, hold in the highest esteem. But I think the cause that the warrior is being called up for should be scrutinized significantly to the expense of the warrior getting work in many cases, right? Just because we have the tool doesn't mean we should use it.
And want to be used doesn't justify being used,
I agree. And so it was never communicated clearly. I don't know, obviously, in retrospect, I know why we went to Afghanistan. Got it. We were punched in the mouth with 9/11. Let's go fucking crush these guys, copy. And I was late to the, and at the time, I was young and brash and ignorant enough to say, I hope this goes on for a long time so I get to get my gun in the fight. In hindsight, man, what was I thinking, that's sort of a young buck way to think about things, right? In my opinion. And I know guys right now who are in are oh, I can't wait to go do this stuff. And it's I understand that. I feel the same way. I felt the same way. But we should know why we're doing this and if it's worth the cost of losing our buddies and, sending people back, having widows and having moms lose their son. Like, that's not supposed to happen. So we better like have a worthy cause of doing it. And so, I'm happy. I wouldn't change anything that I did. I have zero regrets, but I do think that, from a leadership standpoint, I don't know if we have our shit together. We didn't then, and I don't think we do now, unfortunately.